Hey everyone, and welcome back to another spotlight for ARKOLOGY New Encounters. For those who have missed the previous two videos, this is a mostly cosmetic dinosaur mod created by DragonHeart and Big Al. And I say mostly cosmetic because this does also add in extra alphas and even world bosses with lucrative loot. And I'll be checking all the alphas and world bosses in the next spotlights, but for today I want to check out all of the carnivorous variants. Starting off with the Vectispinus by Tristan. Now, a quick note, every carnivore in this video will be based on vanilla, regular in-game carnivores, except for the Vecti here because I just covered this in my previous video, and I didn't have enough time to check out the ARKOLOGY variant then, so I'm doing so here now. But this is the only modded dino, otherwise everything else is bog standard vanilla. So, regarding the Vectis, we can really see the immediate difference in the arms and legs. The ARKOLOGY one is the left one, the vanilla or original Vecti is the right one. I am not using shared colour regions or colour schemes or any of these dinosaurs today, so they're all going to be different wild spawns. But otherwise, like I said, you can really see the difference in the patterning between their limbs and their tail. The ARKOLOGY one really gives me scorched variants, how someone has been making scorched dinosaurs lately. It has that kind of same arid appearance, which I really like. It's a lot more spotty, or more speckled, more mottled in particular. The eyes, I've noticed, it's got very different eye textures. The ARKOLOGY one's got very vibrant, almost Smaug-like eyes, whereas the original one has that blank yellow. I gotta say though, that with these two being of course modded dinosaurs, it's cool just seeing that both their colour patterns are equally as complex and rich. So it's nice to just get two different cool options. So of course the next dinosaur I want to look at is going to be my favourite one, the Spinosaurus, and I must say I like how the ARKOLOGY one on the left has an almost war paint look to it. I also like how the war paint is itself kind of rough. You can really see it around the, not the spine as in the sail, but the spine of the actual Spino itself, the back scales. You can really see a bit of a mottled appearance there. Otherwise, it kind of looks like that the underbelly, it doesn't have quite as bright or defined an underbelly as the original one, but it does stretch out beneath its arms and a little bit into its hands. I presume the same on the back as well. Oh, and it's also got these really cool stripes along the spine as well, kind of like fingers, if you will, following the trails of the spines. That's a really nice touch, so I can see this being really, really fun to colour mutation breed. Not to mention that the face in general just looks so much more interesting. Next up is probably one of my more favourite ARKOLOGY variants, the Carno. So the Carno, as we all know, is a very old model, has not a lot to do with this creature, and personally, I've never really been a big fan of these horizontal stripes that you get on certain paleo art or certain ARK dinosaurs. I don't like horizontal stripes, and yet I feel like DragonHeart and Big Al have come to just a way that this works. I think it's all the black splotching on the tail, the thigh, the arm. It just makes it more interesting. It's not just stripes, it just looks better altogether. Not to mention that, again, compared to the original vanilla Carno, it's just more interesting. It couldn't have been much worse, but I think that they made just a much better variant altogether. And same goes for the Allosaurus as well, so potentially unpopular opinion, I actually really like the design of the ARK Allo. Not so much the way it plays, because haha AI, but I've always liked just how, I don't know, exaggerative they look, and I've always found them really fun to colour breed. But that being said though, comparing these two together, for a start, I like how the underbelly, the left ARKOLOGY variant, is less splotchy compared to the right version. You can see between the blue and orange, it looks very painted on, whereas the ARKOLOGY one looks much more natural. I love the subtle markings around the face as well. They are quite reminiscent of the original one, but again, they just seem to flow better. Not to mention the stripes. The stripes are really, really nice, and they also help just make all the armor and scutes kind of flow with the creature, as opposed to on the original one where they just look almost like a turtle shell, don't they? They look like very just out of it, but here, again on the ARKOLOGY one, it just flows nicer altogether. Also how the cresting on the back of the neck just has a little white bumps and it makes them pop out more too. So the Carcha is an interesting one because the left one is the ARKOLOGY and the right one's the vanilla. And I couldn't actually tell you what is new and different about the ARKOLOGY one, besides that the mouth is just lighter altogether. I couldn't really tell you the difference, but I've gotten this example because this is a natural colour scheme and I just love the way it looks. It's just, again, I can't put my finger on it, but just something about the colours and the texture just seem crispier compared to the original, which feels a little bit muddy. I guess the ARKOLOGY one doesn't have the same spots. It's got some spots, but again, they just feel much more natural. I think I just got like a really good random spawn for colour regions. I guess there's like a bit of a white patches around the thigh actually. Again, like I said, the tip of the snout is just lighter, and it's got like a bit of ridges actually, yeah, like all around the face. Yeah, no, this one it just looks so much better in my opinion. It looks more natural, whereas the vanilla one does look a little bit cartoonish. Yeah, I think it's because the ARKOLOGY one is just more about gradients instead of patterns. They just kind of made the gradients flow better. So the Rex is the one exception where I did manually colour this in, because even vanilla Rexes, their colour regions can be a bit hard to distinguish sometimes depending on how they spawn. So I've made these two quite exaggerative, and as we can see, so the ARKOLOGY one on the left, they've actually turned or kind of used all those osteoderms on the side of the belly and neck as like an actual feature in a colour region itself. Not that the osteoderms are a region, but that splotchiness all around them, which I really prefer, as opposed to the vanilla one where it's just got these kind of streaks running down from the top, kind of almost dripping down the body, if you will. But the thing I really like about the ARKOLOGY version is the face. I just love how the entire upper half of the head is a different region, and I'm glad they didn't go over skull colour scheme because, or skull pattern, because as cool as that is, we've been seeing it a lot, and it's nice just to see it simply have a different block, if you will. Not everything has to be an edgy skull pattern, but also just the way that the underbelly region just blends nicer all together. That is something I'm noticing a lot to the ARKOLOGY ones, is that the underbelly doesn't feel like an afterthought. They actually make it intertwine the rest of the creature, especially in gradients all around those neck wrinkles there. I keep saying it a lot today, but again, it just makes it better. Next up we had the Raptor, and what is it about Raptors in this game? Their variants always look so cool. I like the Aberrant Raptors, I really like the X-Bog Raptors, I also remember the Paleo-ARK cosmetic Raptor variant from ARK Survival Evolved being really cool, and now here again with the ARKOLOGY one, again it just stands out so nicely. I guess it just goes to show that the default Raptor is just so bland, but I mean look, we can see all the differences very, very clearly here. This is a natural spawn, by the way, so I did not add any different colours to this, and I just think it looks beautiful. This is one that I can see myself having a lot of fun colour breeding. I also do quite like how the tipped feathers are actually inconsistent, which is an interesting touch. I'm glad that they're consistent on the tail in particular, but you can see like around the back there, I almost wonder if it's actually an error. No, I don't think it is, because you can see on the back of the head, the mohawk, they are nicely inconsistent. But in the actual spine back part of it, it's that one little green splotch. I'm not sure, but it's very interesting. Whereas the patterning, I just love how the green and white interact so much, and the black stripes in between. It's really fun and interesting. Next up we have Hyaenodons with the ARKOLOGY variant on the left, and I think this is going to be a very interesting one for a lot of people because, you know, they're the closest thing we have to dogs in this game, obviously direwolves as well, and it's cool just seeing more natural patterning for these guys. So the ARKOLOGY one does seem to be inspired by African wild dogs, and I think they've done a really good job nailing that, but also not making it too defined. I do like how it's just natural looking. Sometimes with cosmetic painted dinosaurs, they can look very splotchy, very abstract, like just very artificial. And the African wild dog patterning would have been very easy to accidentally overdo, but I feel like they've done a really good job here just making it look like a balanced canine. It just looks nice. This is one I can see myself having a pack of both variants just for all the wonderful visual diversity. I almost wish it was actually male and female and you can have these both breedable together because they just suit really nicely. Though I will say the ARKOLOGY one's done a much better job on the face. I like how particularly around the brows and the foreheads it's splotchier and again just looks more natural. So here we have the Pteranodon, and this one's a very interesting. So when we look at it from the back, I do adore the back. I do think that the existing ARK Pteranodon, I mean, it's a very, very dated creature, you can tell. It feels like pattern-wise they tried to do something similar to the Tropiagnatha, except Tropiagnatha came out many years after Pteranodon, So it's kind of like an interesting, you know, new and old, if you will. And you can just see that the old one, the Pteranodon, is very, very dated. So therefore the ARKOLOGY one, it just looks nicer, cleaner. If anything, it actually almost shows more detail of the base sculpt itself. It just looks, you know, more leathery. Just the ARKOLOGY one just really shows up the baseline texture just better altogether. That all being said though, I like the idea of the head, but I'm not particularly in love of how it's been done. But I think this might just be a case of it being a much older model, older or lower texture fidelity. I feel like in comparison to everything else so far, the white splotches are just too splotched, they're too crisp. It's interesting, it's very, very interesting, but it doesn't particularly do it for me personally, although I do like the idea of the inside of the wings here, especially when compared to the original one, which is really gross. This one, again, just looks more interesting. This one is clearly trying to play with a new concept, and I like the direction. Next up we have the Giga, and this is a very interesting one indeed. So, as I just mentioned regarding the splotchiness of the Pteranodon's face, the Giga here does have that slightly, but I think it works more in its favour. I do like how interesting these patterns are. They're not just vertical stripes, they've got these interesting zigzaggy-like look to them, excuse me. The face has these interesting markings around what I want to say is the ear. Is that the ear? I guess it kind of is, if the ear had a weird socket in the middle of its face. I mean, I'm judging the model here. The actual patterning itself though, the way that they've incorporated this, I think is very nice. But what particularly gets me about the Giga is that there is indeed an alpha version, and these kind of markings, while on a regular creature might be a little bit hit or miss, I like them personally, but I can see for some it might be a bit much. For the alpha version, let's just say you know it's an alpha when you see it, especially the black, red and white color schemes. It looks so intimidating, and that is something I will be checking out in the next ARKOLOGY video. Quick note, I do love how the cresting there is actually like this nice bright white. It's a pretty good contrast actually, I like that. The whole creature just feels more rugged, to be honest. I do like this. So for the Argentavis, it looks like they've gone for a more mottled appearance with a very stripy front, and this is reminiscent of some species of which I cannot remember off the top of my head, but I think it's a very cool and interesting idea, and it's a nice example of just how, you know, actual birds can look like this, and it's a nice addition to the game, especially when compared to the vanilla Argentavis, where it is just quite plain. I do wish there's a little bit more going on the wings, but for those who like their more plain birds, I guess actually a very, very nice alternative. But my favourite feature for the ARKOLOGY one definitely has to be what they've done with the face and the beak. I think the beak stands out nicely, but the black rim just around the beak, the white jaw or throat if you will, and a bit of the white outline around the eyes, I really love just a face specifically on this. I think they've done a really good job of highlighting the features of the Argentavis' face. Not to mention the feet as well, just also look less scraggly, more consistent, they look cleaner altogether. So next up we have the Dillo, and a quick note I want to make is that this is the one creature in the game that I feel like a lot of people really overdo when it comes to their custom colours or custom like cosmetic variants. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I feel like people really overdo the Dillo specifically. However, for the ARKOLOGY one, I like that they kind of just stuck to what it's already good at, if you will. So it's got this really nice kind of splotchy appearance here, which compared to the existing one, honestly, even the existing vanilla Dillo is also just kind of overdone. So I guess that might be what started a trend, but as I was going to say, this here, it just simplifies it, and I think it simplifies it in a better way. Sure, it's a more interesting patterning, definitely more interesting patterning, but still just less compared to this in a complementary way. Also, the frills. So the frills are the one thing that I think people overdo. I've seen one with really extravagant patterns, and sometimes they look nice, sometimes they look very, very artificial. For this one, it's just got a almost like a bit of a heat map. It just looks like it gets warmer towards the center, and that's about it really. And that's all it really needs in my opinion. It doesn't need to be heavily patterned. I think just this gradient fits it really nicely. Again, in my personal opinion, feel free to disagree. I know some people do prefer the more abstract patterning. Also, just like with the Rex, I do like how the upper and lower jaws are separated. I'm glad it's not a commonly reoccurring thing, because I don't think there should be a feature on every creature. But it's cool to see it here, especially because it makes that blue underjaw just all the more vibrant as well. If anything, it's interesting that they didn't add any coloration to the cresting, but honestly, I actually kind of like it. That is the one part I do like when people add exaggerative colours to, but it's quite nice seeing a more bland one for a change. Also, the underbelly, as you can really see along the tail in particular, I like how the overall blue and black markings are more dominant across the entire body and tail, and aren't cut off by, you know, the underbelly plating. I think it just looks cool as well. And now for the final one, and among one of my favourites of this bunch is the Yutyrannus. And this again is a natural colour scheme that I just happened to spawn in, and that was how it appeared. Yutyrannus, again, is one of those creatures like the Raptor where every variant looks so nice, referring to the X variant and also the Paleo-ARK, ARK Survival Evolved version as well. UTs are just really cool, and ARKOLOGY did not miss either. I find these kind of spotted lines a very interesting touch. I really like how they're broken apart, the top and bottom. I guess underbelly markings technically, but something about it just feels very complimentary. I think again it's the way that they have the markers go like up the thigh, up the arms, is a part of the creature, not just splotched on beneath like the Allo I mentioned earlier, the vanilla Allo, and the faces as well. So I'm very mixed when it comes to having a feathered creature and their face being completely contrasted by the feathers. I'm a bit mixed on that, but I like how they've actually added in some of the, or they kind of just match the regions entirely. So the colours will be consistent and reoccurring along the rest of the creature. So it kind of is its own colour region, but at the same time, the colours reoccur elsewhere. I like that. It just means that it doesn't feel detached. Same with the hands as well, actually. I know some people like their little chicken hands being separate, and that's completely fine. I find it very endearing, but I also quite like how, again, it looks a bit more consistent here too. And I do believe that is the carnivore portion of the ARKOLOGY showcase completed. Some really awesome cosmetic variants, and there are many, many more. So if you're wondering about the Sarko or the Catpro or Tapejara, those are actually already available, but I've separated them because they were added later, and I will be covering those as well, but the next video will be the alphas and world bosses. How difficult they are to fight and what kind of loot they drop. Not to mention just a general size and cosmetic differences. So thank you all so much for joining me on this, and thank you again to DragonHeart and Big Al for making such an awesome cosmetic mod altogether. So many fun new variants and challenges that would be great to encounter in the actual game itself. And as always, thank you all for being with me here today. So take care, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all again next time. Cheers.